Well, kia ora, good afternoon everyone. Today I'm joined by Energy Minister Simon Watts to talk about the next step in our government's plan to strengthen New Zealand's energy security and to improve affordability. New Zealand is currently experiencing a renewable electricity boom, but a rapidly declining gas supply has left our electricity sector exposed during dry years when our hydro lakes run low. And there is no real good reason for why New Zealand has to be in this situation. A country like ours, which is blessed with incredible natural resources, should have abundant, affordable energy. The previous government's misguided decision to ban oil and gas exploration, together with a target of 100% renewable energy by 2030, and the Lake Onslow proposal, had a chilling effect on investment in energy projects. A consequence of those decisions is that New Zealand has faced major energy supply risks in recent years. A shortage of energy supply pushes up power prices for New Zealand households and businesses. That, of course, came to bear in 2024 when New Zealand experienced a dry winter. Severe shortages at that time pushed our electricity prices so high that they were amongst the most expensive in the Western world. Those prices became too much for some local businesses to withstand and forced employers to close their doors. Our government has sought to undo the damage caused to our energy sector and the wider economy. We've overturned the oil and gas exploration ban, and we've established the fast-track regime to get renewable energy projects built faster. But in the intervening years, gas supply has been dwindling, and the result is a greater reliance on coal and diesel, and ultimately higher power prices, which puts more pressure on families and businesses. Recent independent analysis from Sense Partners found that higher energy prices since 2017 have had a significant impact on the New Zealand economy, rising to an annual cost of $5.2 billion. For Kiwis, that means fewer jobs, lower wages and a slower recovery as New Zealand emerges from a challenging period of high inflation and high interest rates. In the last 2 years, therefore, the government has taken a series of steps designed to improve the affordability and the availability of energy as part of our plan to fix the basics and build the future. That includes overturning the oil and gas ban, as I've already mentioned, fostering greater competition through tougher regulation of major energy companies, enabling greater development of New Zealand's natural resources to unleash the supply of renewable and non-renewable energy through things like fast track, and supporting investment in critical electricity infrastructure. And today we're announcing the next steps in establishing an LNG import facility. This will provide a reliable backup fuel source, reducing the impact of dry year risk on electricity pricing and stabilising electricity costs for Kiwis. I'll hand over to Simon to talk a little bit more about that in detail.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister. Looking back almost 2 years ago, Kiwis suffered from soaring power bills due to a lack of backup supply, leaving us at the mercy of a dry year. A lack of backup supply left households and businesses exposed, slowed the economy, and left people understandably frustrated that a country so rich in energy could get it so wrong. That's why this government has made energy security and affordability top priorities. In October, we released our energy package, a 10-point plan to deliver on those priorities and to strengthen our long-term resilience. And today, we are announcing an important next step. The government will be progressing an LNG import terminal. An LNG terminal lets us maintain momentum with our already high levels of renewable electricity generation, while giving households and businesses greater security and peace of mind. It will mean that Kiwis will not need to suffer through an endless series of winter bill shocks. Reducing power spikes and lowering the risk premiums built into power bills will save Kiwis around $265 million per year. That's the equivalent of roughly $50 per household. So we expect that there will be downward pressure on power bills. For businesses, commercial operators, we could see savings in the region of $75 million. For industrial users, around $100 million. That means more confidence to be able to build, grow, and also to electrify. The government has shortlisted leading proposals and is now moving to commercial contracting with the aim of signing a contract to build by mid-2026. The facility will be operational as soon as 2027 or early 28. I want to be clear that LNG is not a replacement for renewables. It is a cost-effective backup fuel that will deal with those all too common dry years. In the future, more than 95% of our electricity is expected to come from clean, renewable energy. LNG won't get in the way of that goal. It will, however, help us to reach it and sustain that build-up. By providing LNG backup, it will give renewable developers the certainty of backup supply that they need to get projects financed and built. And as our system becomes more secure and affordable, more households and businesses will have confidence to electrify. In short, LNG will help keep the lights on while we build more wind, solar, hydro and geothermal. It is a critical investment at a time where declining gas production has forced some of our businesses to cut output or close, hurting regional economies and costing good-paying jobs. Affordable and abundant energy is something that as a country we should have in our basis to be able to drive our economy, and that's why we are taking this step. With the first stage of the selection process for an LNG import facility complete, progress over the coming months will be swift in the context of an industry where these changes can take some time. By as early as 2027, we expect to have strengthened the country's energy security and reduced some of the risks that drive power prices so high in dry years. Located in Taranaki, the mega project will support jobs during construction and create long-term skilled roles once operational, cementing this region as the heart of New Zealand's energy system. Access to LNG is also expected to protect around 2,000 jobs from the economic impact impacted by rising energy prices and gas shortages. We'll use this infrastructure sensibly, importing gas via large shipments only when needed, such as in dry years, to keep costs down and to minimise exposure to global gas price fluctuations. As we deliver this safety net, we know major industries will welcome the breathing space, the plan to enable them to move and transition to renewable energy. Every day, Kiwi households and businesses pay a premium because the market fears winter power shortages. By choosing a path that provides security, protects jobs and ensures that New Zealand is a great place to live and work, those days are numbered. And with that, happy to take questions.
Yeah, why don't we take questions on the announcement, then we'll get to general topics of the day.
So that will be subject to commercial negotiation which is underway, but you're looking at north of $1 billion.
Okay, for what, 450 million in savings a year?
So the savings in terms of net savings, so that is benefits are less cost, is in the region of $275 million.
Minister, the levy that you're proposing works out at about $15 to $30 per household. How do you expect them to feel about paying that levy when we're likely to see electricity companies support record profits next week?
Well, the advice that we've received in regards to the levy is in the region of $2 to $4 per megawatt hour. The advice that we've received as benefits at the low end is $10 benefits. So straight away we're in the money in regards to benefits versus costs, and our expectation of having that certainty of supply takes away the price spikes that we saw, for example, in 2024.
Is that levy going to be ring-fenced and will it be stopped immediately? Is that levy going to be ring-fenced and will it be stopped immediately once enough revenue has been gathered to build the facility?
Look, the reality of the commercial negotiation will dictate the exact operational costs for this facility, and then the levy's purpose will be to cover that cost. So we'll work through that once we conclude commercial negotiations. But to your point, the levy will cover the costs to operate this facility. It in effect operates as an insurance policy.
So you're telling households that the gentailers have pocketed massive profits for 10 years and sent those profits to shareholders, including the government, which is the majority owner of them, get to take those profits while households have to pay the bill for building this infrastructure, which they probably should have been building 10 years ago?
The costs of this will be levied across the electricity sector, including the gentailers. As I've noted, the advice in regards to the benefits of the downward pressure on the price of electricity well and exceed the cost to put this in place. And the certainty that that fuel creates is a positive aspect in terms of underpinning economic growth.
Do you think they should have been building this sort of infrastructure with their own money before pocketing those massive profits and distributing them to to shareholders, including the government, or should they be doing it now? Wouldn't it have been better if they'd done it, 10 years ago and not pocketed these massive profits?
Well, look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we are where we are in the context of this government. As we did a review late last year in regards to energy policy, we identified the core problems that our energy market faces. This is one of the core problems, and as a government we're taking swift and decisive action to give certainty to the market that we're going to build this capability dealing with the underlying issue.
So, Jenna. Professor Jenna, welcome back. It's great to have you back here on your first day.
Thank you. What happened to no new taxes?
This isn't a tax, this is a levy in order to develop, to fund a key piece of infrastructure. Just take a step back and look at what's happening here. What we encountered in the middle of 2024, we saw electricity at about $800 per megawatt hour, which is some of the most expensive electricity in the wholesale market in the world. Was unacceptable. We live in a country with abundant natural resources. We should have abundant and affordable energy. Our core problem is supply and therefore a risk around a dry year risk. And as a result, that leads to forward curves, which are actually quite elevated, and we want to be able to punch those down. And so it's a series of things. It's an and that we're doing here in terms of, first and foremost, we've put a strategic coal reserve at the back of Huntly. So if we desperately need it, we've got it. Secondly, we're making sure that we're opening up LNG importation. Thirdly, we're making sure that we can co-invest with anyone who wants to produce and look for domestic gas, which is well prepared. We're also going through repealing the oil and gas ban. We've also signalled to the MOM companies if they wish to invest in thermal energy, we'll co-invest with them and follow our money with respect to the MOM ownership. And we've obviously got tougher with the EA, with some of the regulatory settings around making sure gentailers have to sell the electricity at the same price to other retailers as they do to the others, and strengthen electricity authority and a bunch of stuff. So it's a series of things that we have to do that actually all add up to make quite a big difference, to make sure that we have the supply in place so that we get the low year risk down so that we can keep stabilised prices for the consumers.
But the fact remains that in the middle of a cost of living crisis, you are putting an extra cost on households that they're not going to realise until when?
Well, there's a benefit that's being created as well, which is in lower forward curves in terms of lowered forward prices on electricity as a result of this. So it's one of those things that we're doing.
How much will this cost the average New Zealand household a week when the levy is introduced?
So as I said, we haven't completed the commercial negotiations on the deals. There's some pretty big ranges, but as we've said, the net benefit to New Zealanders, the net benefit to our household is $50.
Well, as I said, Sean, what we can't do is we've got to have those commercial negotiations. But what we're saying to you is there's a benefit of $10 megawatt per hour and a cost of about $2. So we're already in the positive money. That's a positive for the consumer and puts downward pressure on those prices. As I said, we've got to do the commercial negotiations. What we're giving you is a broad cost benefit of the investment in LNG. But I'm sorry, we are going to be investing in supply and electricity. We want abundant, affordable electricity in this country. We have renewables going off with big investment, and we're not going to have forward curves that actually are out of whack and need to be pulled down.
Have you not done the numbers on this?
We have done the numbers. I've just said to you we're not...
An idea of what it's going to be then.
So I've just said to you, Sean, that we're not going to be able to do that because we have commercial negotiations with providers to work our way through. What we've got for you is broad cost-benefit analysis.
You can't give a number because you don't have one?
Sorry?
Or is the reason you can't give us a figure in terms of the average household bill because you don't have that figure? Or is it because you do have the figure and it's commercially sensitive?
So at this stage we have a range because we've got about 6 players still on the shortlist, but we will be moving by mid-year, by June, to lock that down to one player. And there is you can imagine there's a number of proposals on the table in regards to a whole range of options.
Is it your view that once the saving of the dry year risk is calculated, that on a net basis, this would result in a saving to households because the saving incurred from the removal of the dry year risk is greater than the cost of building this infrastructure?
Yes, that's right, and that's why I have quoted to you before the net savings per annum of $275 million net.
Decision to levy the electricity sector. Why only the electricity sector? Why not levy electricity and gas, or the gas sector alone? Because electricity generation is only a quarter of gas usage.
Because the primary purpose of this capability and importation facility is to provide gas fuel to be able to produce electricity during a dry year. The issues and benefits actually to the broader industrial users is a secondary benefit to them, but the primary purpose is to cover dry year for electricity generation.
Facility, there's been a lot of talk about a small scale facility, a large scale facility. Where have you landed in terms of what you're looking for?
So the concepts that are on the table at the moment are probably the equivalent of what you would see in Australia or Singapore, or slightly smaller, but this would be something that you would consider normative in an international environment.
And then in terms of what the industry workings have been based
in terms
on
of volume, you're looking at about 12 PJs of gas to be able to come in over that winter period, which is about half of the requirement around fuel reserve.
But the other...
You get the figure of north of $1 billion in terms of that upfront infrastructure cost. It's not the $250 million option that the sector was looking at, for example, last year.
Yeah, the reality is that, you know, and this will be subject to commercial negotiation, but you can imagine a provider providing, in effect, a build and operate annual cost through to the industry to run this operation. I don't have an expectation that the government would be putting capital up to actually build this. That would be the industry, but we would levy the cost to, in effect, build and operate to the industry, and this would have a duration lifetime of 15 plus years.
What impact does it have on emissions?
So the emissions profile actually goes down under a scenario where we're looking to bring in gas. Obviously, gas has less emissions than coal, but also there is, because of the certainty that we will have sufficient gas available during a dry year, that actually allows the gentailers to release more and use more water than what they normally would. And obviously, hydro has a lower emissions profile, so we have had that advice.
We're talking about it as a backstop. Do you see this then as a temporary insurance measure, or is this now part of the long-term structural energy system?
This is a strategic energy security asset for New Zealand, and I tell you what, in the context of the challenges that we have around the world, having more options versus less options puts us in a more competitive advantage on the geopolitical stage.
And energy security is national security. So, you know, what we're doing is having another, it's about optionality, it's about and, as I've said before, and it's making sure that we actually put downward pressure on forward curve electricity prices by actually lowering the risk of a dry risk year by having this option in front of us. So that is not, well, we're working our way through that, but we already have levies in place, such as the way in which we fund the electricity authority. So levies on industry is not a new concept, but we'll work through the mechanism in order to do that. Got to be really clear, Cabinet has made a definitive decision to build an LNG terminal. We're not going back to Cabinet for a follow-up conversation. That decision has been made, it's been delegated to relevant ministers, and we're going to get on and make this happen. Tom?
Minister Watts, you say in your press release that the savings of this will be $265 million, $50 of which will be per annum per household. Did you factor the levy into that saving?
Yeah, that is a net cost. So in effect, the cost to build and operate less the levy aspect, so the net benefit.
Okay.
Who will be legal responsibility?
So I appreciate, Prime Minister, what you said about it being an and thing, not an either or. But why is this there's always an opportunity cost. So why is this a better option than stockpiling more coal, or than investing more in batteries to store energy to address the dry year risk issue? Why is this better? It's a very expensive solution.
Well, it's what's an expensive solution is running at $800 megawatt per hour, which is what we experienced in the middle of 2024 when we just came to power. Thank you to the previous Labor administration not having a comprehensive energy strategy in a country that has abundant natural resources and shouldn't be in that position. So, when we look at the importation of what gas is, we're well below the $800, obviously, with this sort of optionality sitting there. But it's one of several things that we have to do, and it doesn't preclude us from expanding in batteries. It doesn't. We've got a massive renewables boom underway at the moment. We've got our fast track legislation in place. We've had one of our first 9 projects actually already approved as a is a renewable energy project. We've got more in the system. In fact, I think we've got something like 40% more generation possible with renewable projects in the fast track system. So we're going to continue to accelerate renewables, but we need to get rid of the dry year risk. That is the single biggest thing that is the impediment to our energy strategy in New Zealand or over many, many years. And if we can de-risk that and lower the forward curves on pricing, that's the thing that actually then puts a downward pressure on prices and makes sure we've got good, stable electricity. We want that in this country because we want to be able to grow the economy, and we need to be able to do that with a good, sensible energy policy.
The question is, though, why not just, as dirty as it is, have a larger pile of coal sitting there? It's cheaper, or I don't know, other solutions, investing in batteries or in storage to address the problem.
Yep. Yeah, well, the short answer is that we're already at capacity with the amount of coal that we've got on the ground by Huntly. We also don't want to just have one option. More optionality gives us more choices and therefore more resilience. We've got a significant amount of gas generation plant around the country that is sitting there. And if you think about back in 2024, when we were at the height of the crisis, we had Huntly gas only running at 65% because we did not have enough fuel. And so this gives us certainty of that fuel supply in conjunction with coal, more options, more choices, more resilience. And more resilience is more energy security. More energy security is more affordable energy.
Can you give taxpayers
who will bear legal responsibility for paying for the levy? Just clarify that.
So we're going to be working through that detail. As I said, we can expect that it will be consistent to the way in which we levy other aspects across the electricity sector, such as the way in which we fund the Electricity Authority. But officials in MB will be working through that.
What guarantee can you give taxpayers that when this is built, after they have paid a levy for it, that their power prices will absolutely go down?
We've had independent advice from Sense Partners that has given us the indicative numbers in regards to a low point of benefits that we've been quoting today. So I have a strong sense of confidence in the numbers in which we're quoting. When you take away the benefit less the cost, there's significant upside. And again, you've got to compare it to the status quo and the baseline. We do not have certainty and we do not have sufficient fuel for a dry year. As a result of the definitive actions that this government is taking today, from winter 27 or late or early 28, New Zealand will have that capability. That is a significant step forward in energy security, and it positions us well going into the future decades.
And can we just get a time frame on when we think those, sorry, I know it's quite basic, but when we think those power prices are coming down as a result?
Well, as a result of the reality, this is about, the market needs to have certainty that this is going to happen, and that's why Cabinet were very clear that the definitive decision to do this has been given to the Minister of Energy to be able to undertake and sign that contract with a supplier by midway through this year. So we're talking, months from where we are today. The reality is when this capability is in place and built in terms of winter 27, you'll start to see that be factored through in terms of the forward prices. Certainty is the key thing that they require, and the Cabinet has done as much as they can to bring that certainty to the market.
So next winter, Kiwi's power bills are going to be cheaper than this winter.
The flow through in terms of the prices within the market do take some time to carry through. But the benefits that have been articulated by the independent advice that I've received from my officials indicate that there will be a downward pressure on power prices.
So, sorry, can you just say, will power prices be cheaper next winter as compared to this
So
winter?
the plant will be in play by winter 27, so we will need to play that through. I don't definitely guarantee. I'm based on the advice that I've received from officials indicates that the benefits exceed the cost.
Not doing it and leaving it in the status quo and the way that we've been running energy policy in New Zealand over the last few years is not good for consumers. We know the core issue. The biggest risk in this particular market of New Zealand, different from other countries around the world, is dry year risk. We saw the impact of that. We saw mills close. We saw people lose their jobs because a Labour government didn't have a strategic plan and a strategic energy policy. That's unacceptable in a country that has abundant natural resources and should have abundant, affordable electricity prices. So we have to do several things at the same time in order to get the show on the road and to get the electricity market in the right place. And one of them is to to certainly increase supply, certainly through a strategic coal reserve, yes, through an LNG importation facility, yes, through co-investing with sourcing domestic gas, yes, through other regulatory changes that we've been making as well. So it's an and in order to create and lift supply. In doing so, that brings dry year risk down, and as a result, forward electricity prices come down and puts pressure downward on them.
It's more around, are the gentailers on notice that they have to pass those savings through to households?
So we've spoken to gentailers in advance of the announcement today, and everyone is on the same page that the capability that we're going to be putting in place in terms of energy security will have a downward pressure on price, and we'll be watching that through the increase in regulation that we're putting in play through the Electricity Authority.
What are you doing to give those in the market assurance that if a Labor government, Labor came into government, that this would go ahead? Because the sector needs certainty. What are you doing to provide that assurance that this will in fact happen?
So I was going to say, Prime Minister, we have briefed the opposition parties in advance of this announcement this afternoon, and we have provided officials to provide guidance to them in terms of what we're doing and why. There is an understanding of what caused the dry year and the way in which to mitigate that, but they'll have their own comments to make post it.
Just on Crown Regional Holdings,
Sorry, ready to move off this topic? After the announcement, is there any more announcement questions?
Just on the
Mark?
timeline for building the facility, you're talking 2027, early 2028, that's very fast. Do you still plan to legislate a consent for it?
That is within the provision of what Cabinet has considered. The reality is we are going to need to enable a number of things to make this happen within the timeline. Cabinet has given the latitude for us to take on board what's required by when. We'll have the definitive answer on that by midpoint of this year. And at that point, it's all on. So, we're aiming to have this thing and this importation capability in place as fast as practical. The sooner it's in play, the sooner we've got certainty of the dry year risk cover.
Yes on legislative consent, or it's on the table?
It's on the table.
But we are determined to get things done. You've seen us do it with fast track. We have to speed things up in this country, and so we need to get to yes much quicker. And so if we have to pass legislation to do it, we will do it, because we're not prepared to have New Zealand consumers paying higher electricity prices than they need to, because we can't organise an energy policy, which is what the Labor government showed us last time. So we're not doing that anymore. We're taking action with a series of interventions that are designed to increase supply, to lower dry year risk in order to get forward curve prices down. That's what we have to do, and that's how New Zealanders will get more affordable electricity prices. So, yes, it's a big decision. Yeah, it's a big intervention. But actually, just sitting on our hands like the Labor government did for 6 years and created the problem that we inherited, we're cleaning up that mess. And so we'll make no apologies for pushing forward and getting things done.
Just on the emissions numbers that are quoted in the announcement, about 40% of emissions from LNG come from methane leakage during transport and storage. So do the numbers that you've quoted account for that part of the process?
The official advice is that the downward pressure in terms of the emissions profile takes into account the aspects that are currently measured within the inventory at the moment. So I'm happy to pick up the detail after that in regards to the point around the shipping point that you're raising.
Are you considering a government inquiry into the Mile Point treatment plant?
Sorry, I'll just come. Let's pick that up. Yes, Simon, do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, thanks, Prime Minister. So, look, I've had a conversation with Mayor Little again today. Prime Minister and I are meeting with Mayor Little after the post-cab this afternoon. I've outlined to Mayor Little a number of options that we could consider. We're going to have a discussion about that this afternoon, and I'll have more to say on that in the coming days. It'd be fair to say that, when you look at the reality of the impact of what this has had on local communities and Wellingtonians, it's completely unacceptable. And, I acknowledge the work that the Mayor has taken. He's new into the role, but, it's pretty clear that this is really unsatisfactory, and we need answers in terms of how a critical asset such as this could fail in such a way. And from a central government point of view, if there's anything that I can do to support that, then I'll be offering that to the Mayor.
A whole bunch of warning signs were missed. Is that acceptable?
Look, at the end of the day, is the accountability of the councils have the shareholding or ownership of that entity to work through the investigation, work out what occurred. As I said, from a central government point of view, If there's a requirement to have additional capability and information gathering powers that they do not have, then I'll be putting that on the table. But we'll work that through with the Mayor later on.
And the nature of, there's a number of, we'll talk to the Mayor and work out, how we can help in the best way we possibly can, but there'll be a number of review scenarios. The key thing here is actually to get to an answer quickly and to work out, why has such a critical piece of infrastructure failed so catastrophically? And I fully understand the public concern and frustration around it. And, we know that Wellington Water has not been optimally managed over a number of years now, but we need to make sure that actually, if there's anything we can do to make sure there's anything we can do on the review front to get to an answer quicker, we're very happy to work with them on that.
Can any of that come back on the dilly-dallying that's gone on with Three Waters, Local Water done well, everyone toing and froing on water infrastructure over the past years?
I think what it reinforces is that the direction of travel of what we're taking under Local Water and to put in place regulation to monitor and make sure that these assets are maintained and are kept up to date and the required quality is absolutely fundamental and critical. And don't forget, under our model, this regulation is happening and will be in play. I am taking advice around any other options, but I think it'd be fair to say on the investigation, we all know that we inherited a deficit of infrastructure investment. The challenge is how do we protect that to not continue to occur in the future, and that's what Local Water done well does.
We've been talking about this since Havelock North, like 10 years ago, and people have been sitting on their hands.
Yeah, so in our 2 years in government, we've actually got Local Water done well, accelerated and ready to go. What it's designed is to deal with exactly this problem, which is that councils haven't been consistently investing appropriately for their assets each and every year over the long run. These are long run assets, 30, 50, 70 years. They need consistent annual investment in them. And secondarily, we want to make sure there's regulation to make sure they actually are spending money to make sure those assets are maintained in the appropriate way. We're putting them into structures so they can access more capital in order to make sure they are maintained and invested in appropriately. But on the other side, we want to make sure that we've actually got regulation to make sure that they're actually doing quality work as well. So they've been the two bits, the economic and the quality regulation that we've put in place to make sure that this sort of issue where things have been, pipes in Wellington have been bursting for some time. And whoop-de-doo, the pipe bursts and it's a Band-Aid solution and away we go again and, fix it up and carry on. Well, we actually need to have a much more strategic management of our core infrastructure. We know we have done a poor job of managing infrastructure and asset management in New Zealand relative to other Western economies, and that's why we've got the basis for economic regulation and also quality of water infrastructure regulation as well.
You said, Minister Watson, there are a number of other options on the table in your meeting today with Mayor Little, aside from the inquiry. Can you share what those are?
So I'll be discussing those. I don't think it's appropriate to go into those options before we've had a discussion with the Mayor, but under the Local Government Act, the Minister of Local Government does have a range of powers to be able to provide intervention and support. I think the point that the Prime Minister's made is fair, is that, look, Wellingtonians want answers pretty rapidly. They don't want to wait, years for a review to be undertaken in that context. So, I'm thinking about what can we do that adds the sufficient amount of powers that is a gap that's currently in play, and do so in a really timely manner so that we can get answers and feed that into the process. So we're working through that at the moment.
Do you have confidence in the chair of Wellington Water?
I remain confident that the council and the entities involved are doing what they are required to do in the context of the transition to the Local Water Done Well structure. Don't forget, as a result of our reforms, these entities will transition as it stands on the 1st of July, and they made those announcements by September of last year. But obviously, again, what has happened here is a pretty strong indictment on underperformance in regards to long-term asset renewal and replacement. And as the Prime Minister said, we're putting in place a model that deals with that going forward.
Prime Minister, on Crown Regional Holdings, the group that holds both the PGF money and the Regional Infrastructure Fund, it's emerged that about 50% of the book is at risk of default. The chair in the annual report said this was basically because it was a challenging economic environment, but it was also because they were operating in places where traditional financing wouldn't. That it showed that was where the losses were concentrated. Is that good enough? Should that be where that money is?
Sorry?
Is that good enough? That
Well,
50% of the book is potentially underwater and that they're saying, well, it's because we're doing loans other people won't?
As I understand it, it hasn't changed that materially from the same position last year versus this year. As I said this morning, a lot of it is to do with the Provincial Growth Fund, which was obviously a larger quantum of cash. What we've done under the Regional Infrastructure Fund since we've come to power is, in the last 2 years, has been to make sure that we put some rigorous criteria around it. It's obviously a lower quantum, and we've got an awful lot of loans. We expect MB and Crown CRH to actually be working with those companies, because we've done mostly loans, not grant money, to make sure that they are working with those businesses to make sure they can ultimately repay those funds. There's no doubt about it. We're making investments in regional New Zealand to drive regional economic development, but that risk has sat there in that book for some time, and it's important that those businesses are well managed and execute well and ultimately repay the loans that they've received.
To Shane Jones about it at all, given he was the minister both for the PGF?
No, I haven't. But as I said, since the construct for the Regional Infrastructure Fund is slightly different from the PGF, which was we've got certainly it's almost exclusively loans. It's a smaller quantum, as you know, and we've put some pretty good criteria around that as we assess each of these assess each of the investments.
Would you expect some of them to fail just because if you're doing the right level of bold investment, some things will fail? And what would you be comfortable with?
Well, again, some things may well do that, but but again, the intention is to say, look, there are opportunities that have been seen in regional New Zealand that previously couldn't get funded. Some of those projects have worked incredibly well and will continue to work well and will be great drivers of growth in the future. But it doesn't preclude us from making sure that the businesses are being well run, well managed, that they're actually executing their strategy well and delivering ultimately and repaying the loans that the government has given them. So, the book value the risk hasn't changed dramatically from year to year. I'm just saying to you that we have put tighter criteria around the Regional Infrastructure Fund versus PGF.
Prime Minister, what role could the United States potentially have with mineral extraction here in New Zealand under the deal that your government is working on with Donald Trump's administration?
Yeah, look, as I said before, it's just what I was reacting to, last weekend, I think it was just the presentation that it's a fait accompli, that we actually do have a deal with the Americans. We don't. We have discussions that are ongoing, as do 40 plus other countries. The Americans are obviously looking for a critical mineral supply chain. We want to have a critical mineral sector here in this country. Why? Because the future of the world is all about semiconductors and AI, but it's also going to be about the clean transition to clean energy and a clean economy, and that's going to require EVs and solar panels. All of those source materials come from critical minerals, and that requires mining here in New Zealand. We're not like Australia that's had it well established for some time and had it available and have a well established business and sector. We actually don't have anything, and so we'd have to make serious investments, and that will require capital from domestic purposes and overseas purposes ultimately to do that. But as to the construct of any deal, we're not anywhere near that, as I said, and we have not made any cabinet decisions around that.
The US says part of that conversation is around mineral extraction. So what role could the United States have in New Zealand regarding mineral extraction?
Well, I mean, again, we're going to need support to actually undertake and kick off a sector. It's going to require extraction. It's going to require capital investment to do that. But exactly as to how that's configured, those are conversations that are a wee bit ahead of us.
The Trump administration may provide us capital funding to help with extraction.
No, I'm not saying that. As I've tried to say, we're not. I don't want to present it as a fait accompli. We are in discussions. Our officials are talking regularly, and there could be a whole different way of constructs of how we unlock the sector here. We want to develop the sector in our own brutal national interests, and we will do that. But for that to do, we've got a lot more discussion to have.
If they were to provide us with funding, would we have to exclusively provide the minerals to the US as opposed to any other partners?
This is the point I've been trying to make over the last week. We're well ahead of ourselves here. We do not have a deal on the table with all of that detail in it. We have officials talking about it, understanding it, exploring what the Americans are looking for, how we could or could not help in that regard. We've got a long way to go, a wee way to go, and when we have some, we haven't even had it, as in no cabinet decisions have been made about this at all.
On how such a deal might impact either our FTA or our broader relationship with China?
Well, again, we manage all of those things, as do many other countries that have, China, for want of a better country, as their number one trading partner. 150 of the 195 countries in the world are in the same position. So that'll all be managed, but we need to work through a whole bunch of issues. But what I'm reacting to and why I've been pushing back a little bit over the last week is to say it's disingenuous to present it as a fait accompli when it isn't a fait accompli. What it is a series of discussions. Our officials talk all the time. We would expect them to be so. We have a massive desire on our side to start a critical mineral sector, and the detail of how we do all of that is still to be worked through.
Sending our top diplomat to DC to talk to a second commander, the State Department's a pretty big deal. I was just asking, have you seen any advice on our moves, how it might impact our relationship with China?
No.
Prime Minister, did you consult with the Minister of Foreign Affairs before calling on Donald Trump to apologise this morning for a social media post regarding domestic politics in America, which you inferred was racist?
I didn't because I don't need to. I was asked a straight-up question and I gave an answer, and I'll continue to do that.
Do you know if Donald Trump has reacted to
Yeah, he has. He's actually condemned it as racist when asked that question.
Apologised?
I don't know. That's ultimately up to him. What I was acknowledging was the fact that it was racist. It's a trope that's well understood, and having lived in America and North America for 8 years, I understand the trope.
You're not concerned that how Donald Trump, given his track record, might respond to those comments?
No, I was asked a question, gave an answer, and the reality is, it has to. And you've actually heard the president come out and actually condemn it himself when asked that question.
Before you answered the question this morning.
Well, I just answered the question this morning.
You said you wanted him to also apologise.
No, I was asked a question. I said I imagined he might want to apologise, and he obviously has condemned it as racist when he was asked that question himself, and that's the answer I gave.
The Opinion Curia poll out just this afternoon that has got hung Parliament. Are you in trouble?
Again, Jenna, we don't comment on polls, as you know. There's a lot of them, and they say lots of different things at lots of different times. So on that note, sounds like we're wrapping it up.
Sentencing in Hong Kong today?
No, I've only just saw that as I came down, and obviously we want a bit of time to digest that. We believe very strongly in media freedoms, so we want to see that ruling and that decision and understand that more before I comment. Okay, thanks team, appreciate it.